afternoon. My name is Joseph Lloyd and I source cars for people on a professional basis, hence the name of my channel, Lloyd Consulting. 4 years ago, I was asked to come up with a series of videos that were filmed inexpensively. We don't use digital cameras, we don't use fluid head tripods, we don't use shotgun microphones, we wear tatty shirts, we just use a phone. But we look at cars that you can buy for a budget up to £1,000 only, and we very much enjoy ourselves. These are cars that might be in cosmetically bad condition. You might see oil leaks, rattly dashboards and cosmetic imperfections, but we go all over the country and we find these very inexpensive cars that you all seem to enjoy watching. So we're starting this episode of No Budget Reviews a bit differently. That's because I thought that these cars were not in No Budget Reviews territory, but actually this 1988 Mitsubishi Colt 1500 GLX 5-door was bought earlier this year for £900. So we'll get out into the sort of interior and exterior design in a bit, but yes, the C10, as these are called, Mitsubishi Colt, was made between 1984 and 1988 for our market, and it is very similar to the first generation Proton 1.3 1.5s, badged under lots of different names all over the world, which we'll get to in a bit, but it's very familiar for me, this car, because well, I used to own a 1993 Proton 1.3 GLS MPI saloon. And as I'm driving here through this little village in Wiltshire, it all seems very, very familiar. I'm delighted to be driving one of these because these cars are, well, they're not common anymore. Anyway, let's go and take a look around, and actually we'll go for another little drive a bit later on. Apologies for the wind noise, viewers. Looking at the outside of the car, it does look familiar, but also it doesn't, because, well, the side profile looks like an old Proton. That's because it sort of is. They are very similar, but this 5-door hatchback was unique to Mitsubishi. Proton, when they made the 5-door hatchback of the area back a little bit later than this, they built a completely different rear end. It doesn't look like this at all. Doors are very similar though, door handles, that kind of thing. But if you want parts to the rear end, good luck. Because, well, not going to find that. I don't know whether I prefer the aeroback or this. My kind of money's perhaps on the aeroback, the facelifted one. I have driven one of those actually. It was 1.5 automatic a while ago. But it looks good. Very, very typically sort of early 1980s Japanese styling. You know, things like the N13 Nissan Sunny, that kind of thing, the A82 Toyota Corolla, you know, they sort of look a bit like this as well. So, pretty rare car in this country. Import quotas at the time necessitated not importing many of these, and there weren't a huge variety of models available. 1.5 GLX like this probably would have been the best seller, maybe the GL. Inside again, because I've owned a 1993 Proton 1.3 GLS saloon, the interior is instantly recognisable to me, or perhaps if you've seen Stats Proton, I Drive a Classic, you've watched some of the old Proton videos that Ian Seabrook did when he actually owned one, the £50 Proton, then again it will seem quite familiar to you. We have got some luxuries that I didn't get in my Proton. One thing, we've got electric windows in the front, and we've also got a driver's seat height adjuster, which is much better. We don't have a sunroof. I only had a sunroof, this doesn't have one. But of course it's a Mitsubishi logo on here, not a Proton logo, different steering wheel. Dash though, almost exactly the same. Hazard lights are here, rated window, and then two little places to put stuff, coins there, ashtray, that one, and then at the bottom another little storage tray. I suppose you really wanted to, you could fit a double den unit in here without being cutting the dash up. You don't really want to do that, do you, on a car like this? Digital clock in there as well. But yeah, very, very familiar. If anything, it just feels slightly differently assembled for some reason. The Lancer Fury, which, or Fury, I can't remember how you pronounce it now, which is the car the Proton's actually based on, which is the saloon version of this, had this dash. Right-hand drive Protons often had different dashes in other countries, but we got this dash in Britain. Fog light switch is down there. So not the most ergonomic dash, and also you look at these funny little pod things. That's for the wipers on the left-hand side. That's for the lights. Then the tidal indicator stalk is just there. That's for one. I must admit though, when I slipped into this car and drove it, everything seemed very familiar. I don't know why, but the doors just seem a little bit heavier than on a Proton. I don't know why. It could just be my imagination or something like that. Glove box, I'm not sure my secret best dogs will go in there. No, they're definitely not going there. I might put them down there though. It's unbelievable just how rare these cars are, and as I've already said, trying to find exact information about them it's difficult. It's very difficult. We want to find information about first generation Protons, which were not sold in this country as Sagas, by the way. They were called the 1.3 or 1.5. Later facelift ones are called the MPI. Yeah, that's easy. These, not really. I like the way you've got a little chrome strip on top of the bumper, and that's a sort of big plastic thing. We'll have to take a look at the boot in a moment. We'll just take a seat in the back. I imagine it'll be similar to a Proton. Yep, windy windows in the back. We've got different sort of seat fabric. It's very typical 1980s sort of corduroy stuff. And I think these headrests are different as well, or head restraints, whatever you want to call them. Again, not masses of room in here. It is a little bit on the cramped side. Obviously we're in a sort of golf class, but in the 80s the golf class, the cars were actually relatively small. We haven't got a rear headrest, we haven't got armrest or anything in here. We do have, I think, an ashtray. Oh, it just flips up like that. Isn't that nice? I don't think I got one of those on my old Proton. No, I don't think I did. It's very hard wearing fabric, this. I think it's sort of denser material than in one of the Protons as well, actually, which maybe not surprising. Yeah, I can see sort of here with those locking knobs can be a bit of a problem. Again, it's a similar sort of story with these, and even the gear leaves are the same as in a Proton. Right, let's open up the boot, shall we, and take a look inside. One thing I really like about this car is actually the high-level brake light that's there. So a very, very high sill on this, sort of typical really of a lot of cars of the era. The early Rover 200s, the SD3 type were like this, a very, very high loading sill. So yeah, it was spacious enough, I suppose. The boot's nowhere as big as you sort of think. It's probably about the same size as like an Escort, and actually again the sort of Mark IV Escort, which this would have competed against it, sort of in a way similar philosophy of design, although it had a little bit more of a boot on the back than this. That is one thing though that would have put me off buying one of these back in the day, is the height of that sill. There's not a lot of sort of distance between the parcel shelf and the loading lip actually to get stuff in, which defeats the point of having a hatchback really. But yeah, a lot of cars were like this. Oh, and a high level brake light too. Excellent, we like those. This car isn't cosmetically pubbed or anything like that. It is a little bit of a project, but it's not too bad. The fact that this car has survived, and they're actually rarer cars than a Mark 1 Seat Ibiza, these. They're unbelievably rare. Just to see one on the road like this, you know, obviously if we saw the turbo one, we'd be even more excited, but this is good enough, isn't it? Let's have a look at the engine. As I just said, viewers, these cars are really, really rare, and the engine, what it looks like a Proton engine. Obviously Mitsubishi designed it, it's called the Orion engine. This very, very long-lived engine, like the Sirius engine as well, which actually the 4G63 is part of that family. This is not. I think they call this the 4G15 or something like that. developing this car about 74 horsepower. The later ones of these have 12 valves and they were used by Proton, but the C12, as you can see actually the chassis number there says C12, this is the C12. The C10 series of Colts didn't ever use the 12 valve heads. Some of the later ones might have done, but not these. So it's actually an 8 valve engine, which means that when Nick came to replace the radiator recently, which prevented him from taking this car to Goodwood for Retro Ride Weekender, he could not just swap a Proton radiator into this because they're not the same. Protons, I think, went to the 12 valve engines about 1990. So this has been recalled, it's been refurbished, and this is the original radiator, which is good. That's sort of a common thing on the parts you could buy for one of these C10 Colts, is that you've got to be quite careful that it's actually the right thing, because a lot of the Proton bits aren't the same. Engine looks very similar. The oil filler cap is there. The sort of air cleaner and bits look similar. Obviously, this is on a carbon auto choke. Most of the Protons were on fuel injection, particularly after 1992, although a lot of the earlier ones would have still been on a carb. I can't remember if the carb was the same. Obviously, it's a 12 valve and an 8 valve head, so possibly it wasn't. Looks pretty easy. One thing I've noticed though, actually, this engine is like a Honda D series, but it turns the opposite way round from most engines. The gearbox is on the left, not the right, and so the cam belt will be over here. It doesn't look too difficult to do the cam belt though. In fact, it doesn't look too difficult to do anything. You can see so much of it. You can see like daylight on the road down there. Or here is even more obvious. So probably not the most difficult car to work on. It's just finding sort of bits, because they weren't that common when they were new. And now, well, this is the only one that I've seen for quite some time. Yes, I know in Seabrook did actually own an automatic one of these for a while, I think. Yeah, I am astonishingly pleased to actually be in the presence of something like this today, especially now the cooling system is working properly. Right, that's enough from me for now. Let's go and have another drive. So it's very difficult to find information about these. Protons, no problem. No problem at all, really. These, not really. I had to do extra research to get things right. What I have established is that the 1.2 version of the C10 Colt wasn't sold over here. It was sold in some markets, but not over here. So the basic engine was a 1.3 Mitsubishi Orion engine with 66 horsepower. And then the 74 brake horsepower version, which is this one, 1.5. The one that you really want, and I think there are only 2 of those left, is the Colt Turbo, which is a 1.6, which had 123 horsepower. The biggest problem with the Colt Turbo was the fact that, unlike, say, I don't know, a Peugeot 309 GTI or something like that, they didn't really do much in terms of the sort of handling and the suspension of the car. It sort of was very much like one of these 1.5s, which had about 50 less horsepower, so probably not necessarily the best of the hot hatches, but they are actually quite nice looking cars. If you ever see a photograph of the Colt Turbo of this generation, then they actually look alright. To drive this is, well, it's very like first generation Proton, because when Protons were released in 1985 in Malaysia, they were based on the 1983 model Lancer Fiore from Japan. In fact, they got the same dashboard in and everything like that. When they were launched in 1989, they had an 8 valve engine like this one, but later, in 1990 and 1991, they changed to 12 valves, and I've driven a 12 valve pre-facelift, and also driven 12 valve post-facelift on the channel. The one I had was a post-facelift, and also a 12 valve, which means that, yeah, trying to find engine parts for these, it's very hard, because only the very earliest of the Protons would have had the 8 valve engines. Apart from that, steering is very nice. It's power assisted in this car. The ride seat is a lot better than mine. In fact, the whole car seat is better assembled than my Proton one for some reason. I don't quite know why. One thing it does have in common with the Proton is the slight hesitancy on the throttle. I don't know why that is. Clutch feels exactly the same. Gearbox is exactly the same. You get an automatic as well. It doesn't feel as slow as it should do, given it's only got 74 horsepower. I would have thought it would have felt a bit slower than this, but it's absolutely fine. It even seems to handle a bit better than the Proton. Maybe the Proton I had, the wheels were really knackered, the suspension was knackered, but this feels okay. There is still some body lean. I mean, you can't go really fast in this without adapting your driving style, but it's okay. In fact, I'm actually enjoying this more than I expected, probably because driving position of this is a bit better. The one I had a sunroof and no steering height adjustment. This has no sunroof and a steering height adjuster, so it's just a bit more sort of comfortable in that way. And we have a bit of air freshener incompetence as well, because that's the way that it goes on this channel. So viewers, let's have a look at some of the places in the world where these cars were made. I'm not going to talk about the Protons, because we've had 2 Protons on No Budget Read before, 2 first generation ones. We're just talking about the Mitsubishi made cars, and also the partnership with Chrysler, because in America this is another Dodge Colt, not a Mitsubishi Colt, a Dodge Colt. In Japan, this saloon version was the Lancer Fiore. And then the Mirage was a name used for loads and loads of other markets as well. I think the ones that will be stated in this country were also badged as a Lancer rather than a Colt, but I can't remember now. They were made in Japan, the Philippines, Thailand, Indonesia, and New Zealand. And the C15 is the one with a 1.2 engine. The C11 is the one with 1.3, so it doesn't bear any relation at all to the engine size, this numbering system. 1.5 with the Orion engine is this one is C12. The 1.6s was C13s. The 1.8 was C37s, and then the 1.5s with Saturn engine. They made 1.5 Saturn and 1.5 Orion versions, were known as the C18. Yeah, it is very confusing. But anyway, thank you ever so much indeed once again for watching. Please don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like this video, leave a comment below, and we shall see you again soon for some more inexpensive motoring.